My son sold their house and gave $800,000 to his wife to burn on vanity projects. Then they showed up at my door in a rainstorm with 6 Louis Vuitton suitcases and no place to sleep. They expected me to welcome them. They expected me to give them the entire second floor of my historic Brownstone. I looked them in the eye and said no. My daughter-in-law, a woman who has never worked a real day in her life, slapped me across the face. She thought she broke me. She thought I was just a helpless old woman. She didn't know that by the time the police arrived, I had already set a legal trap that would cost her everything she owned. Before I continue this story, please leave a comment telling us where you are watching from and subscribe to the Never Too Old channel. We are creating a community of incredible people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. It was 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. A storm was hammering the city, the kind of rain that rattles the old oak window frames of my house. I was sitting in my front parlor with a cup of chamomile tea, enjoying the silence. I worked 40 years in hospital administration, managing budgets and unruly doctors, just to buy this peace. I loved my home. It was a 4-story brownstone in a historic district paid off immaculate and quiet. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring. It was a desperate leaning press on the buzzer that didn't stop. I pulled my robe tighter and checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was Marcus and Tiffany, my son and his wife. They were standing on my front porch, soaked to the bone. Behind them, stacked like a barricade against the wind, were 6 massive trunks. I recognized the pattern immediately. Louis Vuitton, real ones. That luggage set alone cost more than my first car. I opened the heavy oak door. The wind whipped rain into the foyer. They looked like drowned rats wrapped in designer labels. Marcus looked terrified, his eyes darting around the street. "Hi, Mom," he stammered. Water dripped off his nose onto my slate floor. "We need to come in." Tiffany didn't even say hello. She pushed past him, her heels clicking aggressively. She was 30 years old, beautiful in a plastic sort of way, and she looked at my home with the same sneer she always wore. "God, Hattie, this porch is a death trap," she snapped, shaking her wet coat onto my rug. "It is slippery as ice. You really need to resurface this before someone sues you." She tried to step further inside, acting like she owned the place. I didn't move. I blocked the inner doorway with my body. I am 68 years old, but I stood 6 feet tall in my slippers, and I do not move for anyone unless I want to. "Stop right there," I said. My voice was low, the tone I used to use when I fired incompetent surgeons. "Why are you here at 11 at night with all your luggage? Where is your house?" Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. He looked at his wet loafers. "We sold it, Mom. Last week." I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the storm. "Sold it?" That house was worth over $1 million in this market. I gave you the down payment for that house 10 years ago. It was supposed to be your nest egg. Where is the money? "Where are you going?" Tiffany rolled her eyes, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "We invested it, Hattie. In my brand. I am pivoting to lifestyle consulting and high-end influencing. We needed capital to launch. And honestly, suburbia was killing my vibe. It was too slow." She turned to me, a fake bright smile plastered on her face. "We are going to take the second floor here. It is closer to the city center. Don't worry, I will help you update this place. We can get rid of this heavy old furniture and make it chic. I have a vision." She spoke like it was a done deal. Like I was a staff member, she was informing of a schedule change. The rage started in my toes and moved up to my chest, hot and sharp. "You invested $800,000 in clothes and photos," I asked, my voice rising. "You sold the roof over your head for a fantasy." "It is a business," Tiffany huffed. "You wouldn't understand. You spent your life pushing papers in a hospital. Now move. I am freezing and I need to unbox my skincare." "No," I said. The word hung in the humid air between us. Tiffany blinked. "What did you say?" Her voice went shrill. "I said no. You are not stepping foot in this house. This is not a hotel for foolish children who burn their futures. You sold your home without telling me. You wasted nearly $1 million. Go to a hotel. Use some of that lifestyle capital you are so proud of." Tiffany's face turned a blotchy red. She stepped forward, invading my personal space. "You selfish old witch. We have rights. Marcus is your son. You want us to sleep on the street. You are just jealous. You are jealous because I have a future and beauty, and you are just waiting to die in this dusty tomb." She raised her hand. It happened so fast I didn't verify the movement. She slapped me. The sound cracked like a whip in the foyer. My cheek burned. My head snapped to the side. Marcus gasped. "Tiffany," I didn't flinch. I didn't touch my face. I slowly turned my head back and looked straight into her eyes. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," I whispered. I stepped back and slammed the heavy oak door in her face. I threw the deadbolt. Then the second lock. Then the chain. I could hear her screaming outside, pounding on the wood, cursing my name. I walked to the phone in the hall. My hand was steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. I dialed 911. "I would like to report a trespasser and an assault," I told the operator calmly. "My daughter-in-law just attacked me." Then I dialed a second number. My lawyer. It was midnight, but I knew she would answer. The war had started and I was going to finish it. "We sold it last week, Mom," Marcus mumbled, looking down at his expensive wet loafers, unable to meet my gaze. "We got $800,000 cash. It was a seller market, and we needed liquidity fast." "Liquidity." I repeated the word, tasting like ash in my mouth. "You sold the home. I helped you buy the asset that was supposed to be your safety net for liquidity." Tiffany stepped forward, clicking her heels on my slate foyer, interrupting before I could finish. She waved a manicured hand dismissively, rolling her eyes as if I were a child who did not understand how the world worked. "We need capital. Hattie," she snapped, popping her gum, "you do not understand modern business. Building a brand takes serious investment. We are pivoting. Marcus is going to be my brand manager, and we need a base of operations." She looked around my foyer, her eyes scanning the original crown molding and the antique mahogany side table with a look of pure disgust. "Honestly, this works out perfectly," she continued, "since we are between properties. We will take the second floor. You do not use it anyway. It is just gathering dust. We can modernize this place. Get rid of all this dark, depressing wood paint, everything white, open up the floor plan. I can film my content here once we gut the vintage look. It will be good exposure for you." The audacity took my breath away. She did not just want a roof over her head. She wanted to erase my history. She wanted to take the home I had worked 40 years to pay off and turn it into a backdrop for her internet fantasy. I straightened my spine, looking down at her. "No," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "You are not moving in. You are not touching a single board in this house. And you are certainly not gutting my legacy to film videos." "Where is the money, Marcus?" I asked, turning to my son, ignoring her huff of indignation. "You sold a house for $800,000 7 days ago. Where is the cash? Why are you standing on my porch like beggars? It is tied up," Tiffany shrieked, stepping into my personal space. Her perfume was cloying and expensive, overpowering the smell of the rain. "You are such a selfish old woman. You are sitting here in this mansion all alone while your son is out there trying to build something. You want us to freeze. You want your own blood to sleep on the street just because you are jealous of my success." "Success?" I laughed, a dry, harsh sound. "You are not successful, Tiffany. You are a foolish gold digger who has bled my son dry, and now that you have wasted his inheritance, you come for mine." The silence that followed was absolute. Then her hand moved. The slap was loud, sharp, and stinging. It cracked across my cheekbone, snapping my head to the side. Marcus gasped. "Tiffany, no." My cheek burned, but I did not raise a hand to touch it. I slowly turned my head back to face her. My eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time I saw fear flicker behind her rage. She realized she had crossed a line she could never uncross. "You just signed your own sentence," I whispered. I stepped back and slammed the heavy oak door in her face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I threw the deadbolt. The brass click was final, then the top lock, then the security chain. Outside, I could hear Marcus pounding on the wood. "Mom, please open up." She did not mean it. We have nowhere to go. I walked to the phone in the hallway, my movements precise and steady. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my voice was ice cold when the operator answered. 911. "What is your emergency? I need to report a trespassing and an assault." I said, staring at the closed door. "My daughter-in-law just attacked me in my home. I am an elderly woman living alone, and I am in fear for my safety." After I hung up, I dialed a second number. The phone rang twice before a sharp, familiar voice answered. "Vance Law Firm. It is Hattie Mae," I said. "I need you to file for an emergency restraining order. And Vance, get the private investigator ready. They sold the house and the money is gone. I want to know where every single cent went before the sun comes up." I walked to the downstairs powder room, my hands shaking not from fear, but from a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. I turned on the tap and splashed cold water on my face. The water swirled pink in the white porcelain sink. My lip was cut, a small split, where her ring had caught the skin. I dabbed it with a towel, staring at my reflection in the antique mirror. The woman looking back at me was 68 years old, but she was not frail. She was Hattie Mae. I had stared down budget committees and union strikes. I had raised a black man in America alone. I was made of iron and prayer, and right now the iron was taking over. I looked at the lines around my eyes, each one earned. I thought about Marcus, my beautiful weak boy. He was not always like this. When he was little, he used to bring me dandelions from the park, wrapping the stems in wet paper towels so they would not die before I got home from my shift. I worked 16 hours a day back. Then double shifts in the billing department before I moved up to administration. I missed school plays, I missed bedtime stories, I missed meals. I did it so he would never have to know the panic of an empty fridge or the shame of secondhand clothes. I built a foundation for him, brick by brick, sacrificing my own sleep, my own youth. And this is how he repays me, by standing on my porch and letting that woman slap me, by selling the safety net I wove for him. My mind drifted back 10 years, the day I wrote that check. $150,000. It was my retirement fund. Money. I had saved skipping vacations and driving the same car for 15 years. Marcus had found the house in the suburbs. "A good investment," he said. "A place to raise a family. I wanted that for him. I wanted him to have the generational wealth I had fought so hard to build. But I was not a fool. I remembered the day we sat in this very kitchen. The sunlight was streaming in, hitting the oak table. I had the check in one hand and a document in the other. "It is just a formality," Mom Marcus had said, laughing a little nervously as he reached for the pen. "You know I will take care of you." I had covered his hand with mine, stopping him. "This is not a formality, son. This is business. You are signing a promissory note. It says this: money is a loan secured by the property. If you sell that house without my permission, or if you fail to repay me, this note becomes due immediately, with interest." He had rolled his eyes, the way young men do when they think their mothers are being difficult. "Okay, Mom, whatever you say." He signed it with a flourish, barely reading the text. He thought it was just paper. He thought his mother was just being fussy, old Hattie with her rules and her paperwork. He forgot that I ran a hospital. I do not do paperwork for fun. I do it for protection. I looked back at my reflection in the mirror and dabbed the blood one last time. The bleeding had stopped. The stinging remained. Marcus thought that note was a joke. He thought my love made me soft. He forgot that the same hand that rocked his cradle was the hand that signed the checks. He sold the house. He triggered the clause. He did not just break my heart. He broke a contract. And in my world, contracts are sacred. I walked back into the hallway. The red and blue lights of the police cruiser were flashing through the stained glass of my front door, painting the walls in violent colors. I checked my watch. 15 minutes. Right on time. I smoothed my blouse and straightened my spine. I was not a victim, waiting for rescue. I was a creditor, waiting to collect. And the bill was coming due tonight. I looked at the wet footprints on my slate floor, the only trace left of the son I used to know. The change did not happen all at once. It was a slow erosion, like water wearing down stone. It started the day he brought Tiffany home. She walked in with a phone in her hand, filming my hallway before she even shook my hand. She called herself a digital creator, a lifestyle influencer. But in my day, we had a different word for people who did not have a job but always had new clothes, unemployed. She did not work. She curated. That is what she told me. She curated moments. And my son, my hard-working practical. Marcus, he ate it up. He looked at her like she was the sun, and he was just a planet lucky enough to be in her orbit. He stopped wearing the suits I bought him for his birthday. He started wearing ripped jeans that cost $400, and shirts that looked like they had been washed with rocks. He told me he was modernizing his image. I told him he looked like he had been mugged, but the real poison was not the clothes. It was the way she looked at us, at our life. I remember last Thanksgiving I had spent 2 days cooking. I made the collard greens the way my grandmother taught me. Slow simmered with smoked turkey necks until they melted in your mouth. I made the baked mac and cheese with 3 kinds of cheddar, the edges crispy and golden. I made the sweet potato pie that Marcus used to beg for when he was a boy. The house smelled like sage and butter and love. Tiffany sat at my dining table looking at the spread like it was toxic waste. She poked the greens with her fork. Her nose wrinkled as if she smelled something rotting. "Oh, Marcus," she said, her voice loud enough to stop the conversation at the table. "We cannot eat this. It is just so much grease. It is so unhealthy. It is a little uncivilized. Do not you think? We need to be mindful of our bodies if we want to project success." My table went silent. My sister put down her fork. My niece looked ready to throw a roll. I looked at Marcus, waiting for him to defend his mother, waiting for him to say that this was the food that grew him strong, the food that comforted him when he scraped his knees or failed a test. He did not say a word. He just looked embarrassed. "I am sorry, babe," he mumbled. "You are right." Tiffany smiled a triumphant little smirk. "Do not worry. I will handle it." She pulled out her phone and ordered $70 worth of vegan sushi from a place across town. When the delivery driver came, she made Marcus go to the door and pay. She sat there, eating her overpriced rice rolls, while the rest of us ate the meal I had poured my heart into. She did not just reject the food, she rejected the history. She rejected the hands that made it. And it got worse. She started whispering in his ear. I heard them once when they thought I was in the garden. "Your mother is holding you back." "Marcus," she hissed. "She is so old school. All this talk about savings and hard work. It is outdated. It is a poverty mindset. You are a king. You deserve luxury. You deserve to be seen." Her culture is all about struggle. We are about abundance. She made him ashamed of where he came from. She made him ashamed of the brownstone of the hospital job, of the way we laughed loud and loved hard. She isolated him. Sunday dinners became once a month, then holidays, only, then barely a text message. She cut him off from his roots so she could replant him in her plastic pot. She convinced him that spending money was the same as making it. She convinced him that buying her a new car was an investment in their brand. She convinced him that selling his house, the house I bought for him, was a smart business move. I looked at the heavy oak door, now locked tight against the storm. I realized then that the boy standing on my porch tonight was not my son. He was a hollow shell that Tiffany had filled with her own greed. She had eaten him alive, and now she had come for the leftovers. But she forgot one thing. I am not Marcus. I do not starve for her approval. And I do not let anyone disrespect my table. The blue lights of the police car flashed through the window, cutting through my memories. The officers were walking up the path. I took a deep breath and composed my face. I was done mourning the son I lost. It was time to protect the woman who survived him. The police officers were polite but firm. They took my statement in the hallway, while their partner kept Marcus and Tiffany on the porch. I watched through the sheer curtains as they escorted my son and his wife off the property. Tiffany was screaming something about suing the city and calling the mayor, but the officers just guided her toward their cruiser to give her a ride to the nearest motel. Marcus looked back, once his face a mask of misery and confusion. But I closed the curtains. I did not wave. I did not cry. I went upstairs, washed my face, and slept like a baby. The next morning the doorbell rang at 8 sharp. It was Dante. Dante is my second cousin's son, but I raised him in spirit, if not in fact. I paid for his suits when he started his first job. I paid for his prep courses for the paralegal certification. He is 26 years old, sharp as a tack, and he specializes in financial fraud. He walked in carrying a laptop bag and a box of donuts, looking like a man on a mission. I heard what happened, he said, kissing my cheek. The family phone tree is faster than the internet, Aunt Hattie. Are you okay? I am better than okay, I said, pouring him a cup of black coffee. I am motivated. Sit down, Dante. We have work to do. He opened his laptop on my kitchen table, pushing aside the sugar bowl. I told him everything. The sale, the price, the demand to move in, the slap. He listened without interrupting, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Okay, let's look at the public records. He said, his eyes narrowing at the screen. Here it is. The deed transfer was recorded 3 days ago. He let out a low whistle. Aunt Hattie, they didn't just sell the house, they gave it away. Market value in that neighborhood is easily $1.2 million. They let it go for $800,000 flat to a cash buyer, an investment LLC. I sipped my tea, feeling the steam warm my face. Why would they do that? Speed Dante said, turning the screen to show me. They took a $400,000 loss just to get the cash in hand immediately. That is not an investment strategy. That is desperation. That is someone running from something. He looked at me, his expression serious. They have $800,000 in liquid cash right now. If they are reckless, that money could disappear in a week. We need to move fast. Do you have any leverage? Anything written down? I smiled then. It was a small, cold smile. I stood up and walked to the antique secretary desk in the corner. I pulled a small brass key from my pocket and unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside was a fireproof box. I took out a single sheet of heavy cream-colored paper. 10 years ago, I said, handing it to him. Marcus thought I was being difficult. He thought I was just an old woman obsessed with paperwork. But I knew. Dante took the paper. It was the promissory note for the $150,000 down payment. He scanned the text, his eyes widening as he reached the bottom of the page. Clause 4, he read aloud. Acceleration upon alienation of title. If the borrower sells, transfers, or otherwise disposes of the collateral property without the written consent of the lender, the entire principal balance plus accrued interest at a penalty rate of 12% per annum compounded annually becomes immediately due and payable. He looked up at me, a grin spreading across his face. Aunt Hattie, this is ironclad. You didn't just loan him money, you put a lien on his future. Did they notify you of the sale, he asked. No, I said. Then they are in default. Dante said, tapping the paper. We do not just have grounds to sue, we have grounds to freeze their assets. If we file this morning, we can lock up that $800,000 before Tiffany buys another pair of shoes. I nodded, smoothing the tablecloth. Do it, I said. Freeze it all. They wanted to play games with my house. Now I'm going to play games with their money. It was noon and the rain had finally stopped, but the storm inside my life was just getting started. I was in the kitchen making a turkey sandwich when Dante looked up from his tablet. His face was pale and his jaw was tight. Aunt Hattie, he said, his voice low. You need to see this actually. You probably do not want to see this, but you need to know what she is doing. He turned the screen toward me. It was a live video on Instagram. The red live button was pulsing in the corner, and the viewer count was climbing by the thousands. There was Tiffany. She was sitting cross-legged on a bed with a hideous floral spread. Clearly, the cheap motel the police had dropped them at. She was not wearing her designer coat or her sneer now. She was wearing an oversized gray t-shirt, looking small and fragile. Her mascara was artfully smeared under her eyes, giving her the look of a tragic heroine. I just do not know what to do, guys, she whispered to the camera, sniffing loudly. We have nowhere to go. My mother-in-law, Hattie, she just hates me. She has always hated me because I am white. She cannot stand that her son married outside the race. I stared at the screen, my sandwich forgotten on the counter. The audacity was breathtaking. She was playing the victim card, shuffling the deck and dealing herself a winning hand of lies. Last night in the middle of that hurricane, she threw us out. Tiffany continued, wiping a tear that looked suspiciously like tap water. She literally opened the door and pushed her own son into the rain. We begged her. We told her we had nowhere safe to go, but she screamed at us. She said she did not want my kind in her historic house. She called us trash. Now we are in this roach motel, and I am just so scared for Marcus. He is heartbroken that his own mother would choose prejudice over family. She paused to look at the camera, checking her angles, making sure the light caught her tears just right. She did not mention the $800,000 she had burned. She did not mention the slap that was still throbbing on my cheek. She did not mention the 6 Louis Vuitton trunks, stacked in the corner of that cramped motel room, probably worth more than the motel itself. She painted a picture of a destitute young couple victimized by a bitter, racist old woman. The comments were flying up the screen faster than I could read them. "What a monster," one user wrote. "Drop the address. We write at dawn," said another. "How can a mother be so cruel? This is abuse. Call the cops." Then my landline started ringing. I have had that number for 30 years. It rang shrill and demanding through the kitchen. I picked it up once without thinking. "You racist witch," a stranger voice spat in my ear. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself. We know where you live." I hung up and walked over to the wall, calmly unplugging the cord form. The jack. The silence that followed was heavy but brief. My cell phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Marcus. I picked it up and read the message aloud to Dante. "Mom, do you see what happens? Do you see how much people support her? This is going viral. It is already at 50,000 views. Just apologize. Let us move in on the second floor. Give Tiffany the budget to redecorate, and she will delete the video. She will tell everyone we made up, and it was a misunderstanding. Please stop being stubborn before you lose your reputation." I looked at the phone, then I looked at Dante. He was waiting for me to explode, to cry, to panic because the world was turning against me. But I did not feel panic. I felt a cold, hard clarity. Tiffany thought she was fighting a public relations war. She thought likes and comments were ammunition. She thought she could shame me into submission. She did not realize that while she was performing for strangers on the internet, we were building a cage of ironclad evidence around her. She was worried about her follower count. I was worried about the federal statutes she had violated. "She wants a show," I said to Dante, placing the phone face down on the table. "Fine. Let her have her audience. It just means there will be more witnesses when she falls." I did not reply to Marcus. I did not go online to defend myself. I simply poured another cup of tea and watched the view. Count tick up, knowing that every single person watching was about to see exactly who Tiffany really was. And when they did, there would be nowhere for her to hide. The phone rang again at exactly 2 o'clock. It was Marcus. I looked at Dante, who was sitting across from me, buried in spreadsheets. He nodded once and hit a button on his laptop. We were recording. I picked up the receiver and pressed the speaker button. The silence on the other end was heavy, filled with the static of someone breathing too fast. "Mom," Marcus said. His voice sounded strange, stiff, rehearsed, like a bad actor reading lines from a cue card. "We need to talk about the situation." "I am listening, Marcus," I said, keeping my voice perfectly neutral. I could hear a whisper in the background, a sharp hissing sound. It was Tiffany. "Tell her," she hissed. "Read the script." Marcus cleared his throat. "Tiffany is right, Mom. We have been talking and we are very concerned about you. You are old. You are 68 and frankly you are not lucid anymore. Your behavior last night, the violence, the confusion throwing your own family out into a storm. It shows a significant cognitive decline." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter so hard my knuckles turned white. Cognitive decline. My son, the boy I tutored through algebra, the man who called me every time he couldn't figure out how to file his taxes, was telling me I was losing my mind. "If you do not hand over the management rights to the Brownstone voluntarily," Marcus continued, his voice gaining a shaky sort of confidence, "we are going to take legal action. We are going to sue you for elder abuse. We are going to petition the court for a conservatorship. We will argue that you are a danger to yourself and others, and we will take control of your assets to protect you." The room seemed to tilt. Elder abuse. They were threatening to use the laws meant to protect vulnerable seniors as a weapon to strip me of my autonomy. They wanted to declare me incompetent. They wanted to put me in a home and take the keys to my kingdom. I looked at Dante. His eyes were wide with fury, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he transcribed every word. But I felt a sudden strange calm wash over me. It was the calm of a general who realizes the enemy has just walked into a minefield. They had overplayed their hand. By threatening a conservatorship, they had opened the door to a full legal examination of all family finances. They were inviting the court to look at everything. And I had nothing to hide. I took a deep breath. I did not scream. I did not cry. I let the silence stretch out until Marcus squirmed on the other end of the line. "Is that your final decision, Marcus?" I asked softly. "You are threatening your mother with court." "It is not a threat, Mom," he said, though his voice wavered. "It is a necessity. Tiffany says we have to do what is best for the family legacy. Tiffany says, always Tiffany." "Very well," I said, my voice hardening into steel. I clicked the record button on my phone off, knowing Dante had captured the entire digital stream. "You want to play the law, Marcus?" I asked. "Fine, I accept. If you want to involve the courts, we will involve the courts. I am done protecting you from the world." I hung up the phone before he could answer. I looked at Dante. He looked up from his screen, a savage grin spreading across his face. "Aunt Hattie," he said, "they just threatened a federal witness in a fraud investigation. Do you realize what they just did?" I poured my cold tea into the sink. "I know exactly what they did, Dante. They just gave us permission to take the gloves off. Call Vance. Tell her to prepare the paperwork. And Dante, find out where that money went. I want to know every dirty secret they are hiding before I walk into that courtroom." It was 3 a.m. when Dante finally spoke, his voice cutting through the silence of my dining room like a knife hitting bone. I had been dozing in my chair, waiting while he worked his magic, tapping away at his laptop with the relentless focus of a surgeon looking for a tumor. He spun the computer around to face me, his eyes dark with a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. "Aunt Hattie, you need to look at this," he said, pointing to a spreadsheet that looked like a map of a disaster zone. I pulled in a favor with a buddy who works in forensic accounting. We tracked the routing numbers from the house sale. I leaned in, putting on my reading glasses. The screen was a sea of red numbers. The sale had closed exactly 90 days ago. The wire transfer for $790,000 after fees had hit their joint account on a Tuesday. By Friday, it was gone, moved into a shell account called Tiflux Ventures, LLC. "And here is where it gets ugly," Dante said, scrolling down. "They burned through nearly $800,000 in 3 months. Aunt Hattie, that is almost $9,000 a day." I felt the blood drain from my face. I thought she was buying clothes or renting studio space, but this was a hemorrhage. "Where did it go?" I whispered. Dante pointed to a highlighted line. $200,000 went in a single wire transfer to an entity called JS Consulting. I looked it up. It is a shell company registered in Delaware to a P.O. box. No website, no employees, no business license, just a black hole for cash. And this Dante continued highlighting a series of transactions totaling over $100,000. These are charges for high-end luxury goods. Hermes, Chanel, Rolex. But here is the catch. Aunt Hattie. He looked at me, his expression grim. I cross-referenced these with the inventory she posts on her social media. She never wears these items. She never unboxes them. "I don't understand," I said, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. "If she bought them, where are they? She did not buy them," Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Or she bought them and returned them immediately for store credit, which she then sold for cash at a loss. Or she is buying them for someone else. This is not lifestyle spending. Aunt Hattie, this looks like laundering. It looks like she is washing money or paying off a debt that she cannot put on the books." He tapped the screen again. "Look at the pattern. Large round number withdrawals from ATMs in Atlantic City and Vegas. 4,000 here, 5,000 there, followed immediately by these massive purchases of goods that vanish. This is not a business. This is a panic. She is bleeding out, and she is trying to cover it up with a paper trail of fake consulting fees and phantom handbags." I sat back in my chair, staring at the glowing screen. The girl who had slapped me wasn't just a spoiled brat with a shopping addiction. She was something far more dangerous. She was a desperate criminal, hiding a secret that cost nearly $1 million. And my son, my foolish blind son, was the getaway driver for a robbery he did not even know was happening. "Keep digging," I told Dante, my voice steady, despite the trembling in my hands. "Find out who JS Consulting is. If she sent $200,000 to a ghost, I want to know who is haunting her, because ghosts do not cash checks, but blackmailers do." Vance sat behind her mahogany desk, looking like a shark in a silk blouse. She tapped a manicured nail on the file in front of her. "Hattie," she said, her voice low and smooth, "do not post a single thing. Do not reply to the comments. Do not go on Instagram. Let them scream into the void. While they are busy fighting with strangers on the internet, we are going to file these." She slid 2 documents across the desk. The first was a civil lawsuit for breach of contract, seeking immediate repayment of the $150,000 loan, plus 10 years of interest and penalties. The second was a formal criminal complaint for assault and battery, documenting the slap, the bruising, and the emotional distress. "Let them think they are winning the PR war," Vance said, smiling, a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Because when we drop this hammer on Friday, they will not know what hit them. But to serve them properly, we need them here in this room. We need them to walk into the trap willingly." I nodded, understanding the play I needed to be the tired old woman they claimed I was. I needed to be the fragile mother, broken by public shame. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus. My hand did not shake this time. I let my shoulders slump. I let my voice crack just enough to sound defeated. "Mom," Marcus answered on the first ring. His tone was clipped, impatient, like a man who thought he held all the cards. "I am tired, Marcus," I said, exhaling a long, shuddering breath. "I cannot take this anymore. The phone calls, the strangers shouting at my house, the internet. It is too much. You win." There was a pause on the other end. Then I heard Tiffany's muffled voice in the background. "Is she folding?" "I just want peace," I continued, letting a little wobble enter my tone. "If you want the house, if you think that is what is best, then fine. Let us meet. I will sign the papers." "Really? Mom?" Marcus sounded shocked, almost suspicious. "You are just going to give us the deed." "I am old, Marcus," I said, repeating their own insults back to them. "Maybe I am not thinking clearly anymore. I just want the noise to stop. Come to Vance's office on Friday morning. Bring your lawyer. Bring Tiffany. Let us settle this transfer and be done with it." I could practically hear the high five through the phone. "Okay, Mom," Marcus said, his voice smoothing out into a smug, patronizing purr. "That is the right decision. We just want to take care of you. We will be there Friday, 10 a.m. I hung up the phone and looked at Vance. She was already drafting the subpoena for the bank records. "They think they broke me," I said, standing up and straightening my blazer. "They think they are coming." "Hey?" To a surrender ceremony, Vance looked up, her eyes gleaming. "They are Hattie. They are just confused about who is surrendering." I walked out of her office into the bright afternoon sun. The internet was still burning with Tiffany's lies. Strangers were still leaving nasty voicemails on my machine, calling me a monster, but I did not care anymore. Let them have their moment. Let them gloat. Let them spend money. They did not have on celebratory champagne, because on Friday morning the party was going to end, and I was going to be the one turning off the lights. Friday morning arrived with a sky as gray as slate, but my mind was clear as a bell. I stood in front of my closet and pushed aside the soft cardigans and the sensible floral dresses Marcus expected to see. I reached to the very back and pulled out the garment bag I hadn't opened in 5 years. It was my St. John knit suit, navy blue with gold buttons, tailored, severe, expensive. It was the suit I wore when I fired the chief of surgery for gross negligence in '98. I put it on and buttoned the jacket. It still fit perfectly. I fastened my pearls around my neck. They were real Akoya pearls Spencer bought me for our 30th anniversary. They felt cool and heavy against my skin like armor. I pinned my hair up tight. No loose strands, no soft edges. I put on my glasses, not because I needed them, but because they hid my eyes. When I looked in the mirror, I did not see a confused elderly woman losing her grip on reality. I saw a hospital administrator preparing for a hostile takeover. I saw a woman who signed million-dollar checks without blinking. Downstairs, Dante was turning my dining room into a war room. The laser printer had been humming since dawn, churning out paper at a frantic pace. He wasn't just printing bank statements, he was printing a timeline of destruction. He had organized the evidence into 3 massive binders, one for the house sale, one for the shell company transfers, and one for the fraud. He held up a stack of papers thick enough to choke a horse. "Here is the money trail, Aunt Hattie," he said, his eyes tired but bright. "It is not just a trail, it is a highway. We have the wire transfers, the shell company registration in Delaware, and the IP address logs from Tiffany's phone. We have the receipts for the luxury goods she returned for cash credit. It is all here." We packed the binders into bankers' boxes. They were heavy, but I insisted on carrying one myself. I wanted to feel the weight of their betrayal in my hands. We drove to Vance's office in silence. The city looked different to me today. Sharp, defined. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the hunter. Vance met us at the door of her firm. She was wearing a red silk blouse, a power color. She looked at my suit, and a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "I see you came dressed for a funeral," she said. I smoothed my lapel. "No, Vance. I came dressed for an audit." We went into the main conference room. It was imposing with floor-to-ceiling windows and a mahogany table long enough to land a plane on. I took the chair at the head of the table, the seat of power. Dante set up his laptop, connecting it to the large wall monitor, but keeping the screen black. We hid the banker's boxes under the sideboard out of sight. Vance checked her watch and leaned close to me, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Our other guest is settled in the adjoining office," she said. "He has a clear view of this room through the glass partition, and he can hear everything through the intercom system. He said he will wait for your signal." I nodded, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. I was not afraid. I checked the time. 9:55. They would be here any minute, expecting to find a broken old woman ready to sign away her life. They were walking into a lion's den, and they were bringing steaks. I folded my hands on the polished wood and waited for the door to open. The heavy mahogany door swung open at 10:15, precisely 15 minutes late. Tiffany walked in first, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. She was wearing a white tailored pantsuit that cost more than my first year of college tuition, and huge dark sunglasses that she did not remove immediately. She strode into the conference room like she was stepping onto a runway, her chin held high, her movements exaggerated and performative. Behind her came Marcus. My son looked less like a husband and more like a hired mule. He was carrying a sleek leather briefcase in one hand and Tiffany's oversized designer tote in the other. He looked exhausted. His shoulders slumped under the weight of her expectations. He did not look at me. He kept his eyes on the floor, scuffling in like he was afraid he might leave a mark on the carpet. Tiffany stopped just inside the door and held up her phone. I could see the ring light reflection in her sunglasses. "Hey guys," she chirped, her voice pitching up an octave into that fake sweet influencer tone. "We are just walking into the mediation now, sending love and light, hoping we can heal this family trauma. Remember to buy my merch link in bio." She held the pose for a second longer, then tapped the screen, and the smile vanished instantly, dropped like a heavy curtain. Her face settled into a mask of pure disdain. She shoved the phone into her pocket and marched to the other end of the table. She did not say hello. She did not apologize for being late. She did not wait to be seated. She pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table, the one directly facing me, and sat down with a heavy sigh, as if her existence was a burden to us all. Marcus scrambled to sit beside her, placing her bag on the table between us like a shield. Tiffany reached into the briefcase Marcus had set down and pulled out a thick blue folder. She tossed it onto the polished wood table. It slid across the mahogany surface with a dry hiss, stopping just inches from my folded hands. "There it is, Hattie," she said, her voice flat and hard, "the transfer of deed and the durable power of attorney. We had our lawyers draw it up this morning. It is very generous, considering what you did." She leaned back, crossing her arms over her chest. "We are willing to drop the elder abuse lawsuit. We are willing to forget that you assaulted me and threw your own son out into a hurricane. If you sign these papers, transferring the Brownstone to Marcus and naming me as the executor of the estate, we will let you stay in the garden apartment, rent-free. We will handle the finances, we will handle the maintenance, and you can just live out your remaining years in peace." Marcus cleared his throat nervously, looking at the papers, then at me. "It really is the best option, Mom," he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. "We just want to protect you. You are clearly struggling, and this way we keep the asset in the family." Tiffany smirked, a small ugly twist of her lips. "Sign it, Hattie. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. We are doing you a favor." I looked at the blue folder. I looked at Marcus, who was sweating through his shirt. I looked at Tiffany, who was already checking her reflection in her compact mirror, expecting my surrender. I did not speak. I did not move to pick up a pen. I just sat there, my hands clasped over my own stack of evidence. Breathing slowly and evenly, I let the silence stretch out, filling the room, thickening the air. I let them sit in their own arrogance until Tiffany shifted uncomfortably in her seat and Marcus started tapping his foot. They thought my silence was fear. They thought I was hesitating because I was beaten. They did not know I was just waiting for the ink to dry on the trap I was about to spring. I looked at the blue folder sitting in front of me. It looked like a tombstone for my life's work, a legal container for my dignity. Tiffany was tapping her acrylic nails on the table, a sharp, rhythmic sound of impatience. Marcus was wiping sweat from his upper lip, staring at the pen he had placed next to the document. Waiting for me to pick it up, I reached out my hand, but instead of taking the pen, I placed my palm flat against the blue folder and slid it across the mahogany table. It spun slowly, stopping at the edge, right in front of Marcus. "We are not going to be signing that," I said, my voice calm and level, hardly rising above the hum of the air conditioning. "Because before we discuss the disposition of my assets, we need to have a very serious conversation about your debts," Tiffany scoffed, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "Debts. What are you talking about, Hattie? You are the one who owes us. You owe us for the emotional distress. You owe us for the house we lost because of your temper." I ignored her. I kept my eyes locked on Marcus. I reached down into my bag and pulled out the single sheet of cream-colored paper I had retrieved from my fireproof box. The paper was heavy, slightly yellowed at the edges with age, but the ink was as black and sharp as the day it was signed. "Do you recognize this, Marcus?" I asked, holding it up. He squinted at it, confusion clouding his face. "It looks like a letter. It is the promissory note you signed 10 years ago." I said, placing it gently on the table between us, "the day I gave you the check for $150,000 for your down payment." Marcus laughed, a nervous, jerky sound. "Mom, come on. That was a gift. You gave that to us to help us start our life. You cannot seriously be bringing that up now." "It was not a gift, Marcus," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "It was a loan, a secured loan. And if you had bothered to read what you signed, you would know about Clause 4. I put on my glasses and read aloud, my finger tracing the line of text, Clause 4, acceleration upon alienation of title. In the event that the borrower sells, transfers, or otherwise disposes of the collateral property without the express written consent of the lender, the entire principal balance plus accrued interest at a penalty rate of 12% per annum, compounded annually, becomes immediately due and payable. I looked up over the rim of my glasses. "You sold the house, Marcus. You triggered the clause. You did not ask for my permission. You did not even tell me until you were standing on my porch in the rain. That means the loan is called in right now." Marcus went pale, the color draining from his face like water down a drain. "But Mom," he stammered, "you cannot mean that. I thought you just gave it to me because you loved me." I sat back in my chair, folding my hands. "I gave you love freely, Marcus. I gave you support freely. But money is business, and you just did very bad business." Dante leaned forward and slid a calculation sheet across the table, stopping next to the note. $150,000. Principal plus 10 years of compound penalty interest brings the total immediate debt to $448,000. "And 50 cents, Tiffany shrieked, jumping up from her chair, nearly knocking it over. "You are insane. You cannot just demand $500,000. You cannot do that to family." "I can. And I did," I said coldly. "But do not worry about writing a check. I know you do not have the liquidity." I pulled out the final document from my stack. It was a court order stamped at 8 a.m. that morning. "Since I am a secured creditor and you admitted to dissipating assets, I filed an emergency motion to freeze your accounts, the remaining money from the house sale, the money in your joint checking, the money in your savings. It is all frozen as of an hour ago. You cannot spend a dime until you pay me what you owe." Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. He slumped in his chair, his mouth opening and closing without sound. He realized in that moment that he wasn't here to take my house. He was here to lose everything he had left. "You have no right!" Tiffany screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. "That is Marcus' money. It is our money. You cannot just take it because you are a bitter old hag. I will sue you. I will ruin you. I will make sure the whole world knows you are a thief." I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I simply looked at Dante and nodded. Dante pressed a key on his laptop. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life, displaying a high-resolution image of a bank statement. It was magnified so every zero was visible from the back of the room. "Let us talk about where that money went." "Tiffany," I said, my voice cutting through her screaming like a razor through silk. "You claimed you were investing in a lifestyle brand. You claimed you were building a business. But businesses have expenses, receipts, invoices." I pointed to the screen to the highlighted line item that showed a wire transfer of $200,000. Dante changed the slide. It showed a business registration document for JS Consulting. "Who is JS Tiffany?" I asked, leaning forward. She went silent, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Her eyes darted around the room looking for an exit, looking for a lie. "I will tell you," Dante said, his voice cool and professional. "JS stands for Jason Sterling." Marcus lifted his head, his eyes wide and confused. "Jason," he whispered. "Jason, my college roommate? Your ex-boyfriend?" Tiffany froze. She stopped breathing. Dante clicked the next slide. It was a photo of Tiffany and a man sitting on a yacht taken just 2 weeks ago. The date stamp was clearly visible. They looked very comfortable. They looked like people spending someone else's money. "You told Marcus you were at a branding conference in Miami," I said. "But you were not building a brand, were you? You were funding a lifestyle and not just yours." Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Tiffany," he said, his voice shaking, "you sent $200,000 to Jason." "Why?" "Because he promised he could double it," she blurted out, desperate now, the lies spilling out of her like vomit. "He has this investment fund. It is crypto arbitrage. It is guaranteed returns." "Marcus, I was doing it for us. I swear." Dante laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound. "It is not an investment fund, Tiffany. It is a Ponzi scheme. And you did not just invest. You bought in Jason Sterling, is under federal investigation for running a $40 million fraud ring. And thanks to your wire transfer, you are not just a victim, you are a co-conspirator. You recruited other people. Did not you?" The police found the messages. Marcus looked at his wife like he was seeing a stranger. He looked at the screen, then at me, then at her. The realization washed over him slow and terrible. She had not just spent his money on clothes. She had given his inheritance, the roof over his head, to another man, a man she was still seeing. "You gave him my house," Marcus whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You gave my house to Jason." I did not say a word. I just let the truth hang there, heavy and suffocating. The air in the room felt charged electric with the impending crash. Tiffany looked cornered, wild-eyed and dangerous. She knew the game was over. She knew there was no influencer spin that could fix this, but she did not know that the knock on the door was about to get a lot louder. Tiffany's eyes went wild. She looked at the screen, then at Dante, then at the laptop sitting on the table like a ticking bomb. She let out a guttural scream, a sound of pure animal panic, and lunged across the mahogany table. Her manicured claws were aimed straight for the keyboard. She thought if she could just destroy the machine, she could destroy the truth. Dante did not flinch. He did not have to. The heavy conference room door swung open with a force that stopped Tiffany mid-lunge. She froze her hands, hovering inches above the laptop, her chest heaving. 3 men and a woman walked in. They were not wearing local police uniforms. They were wearing navy windbreakers with 3 yellow letters emblazoned on the back, FB. The room went so quiet you could hear the hum of the hard drive spinning. Tiffany dropped back into her chair, her legs giving out as if her strings had been cut. Marcus looked at the agents, then at me, his face a mask of total confusion, terror dawning in his eyes. "Tiffany Hayes," the lead agent said. He did not shout. He did not have to. His voice was heavy with the weight of federal authority. "We have a warrant for your arrest." "Me," Tiffany squeaked. Her bravado was gone, replaced by the trembling of a child caught stealing. "For what?" "Interstate wire, fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering." The agent recited, stepping forward to pull a pair of steel cuffs from his belt. "We have been tracking the Sterling ring for months. We were missing the link on the West Coast distribution until 2 days ago." He looked over at Vance, who gave a small, imperceptible nod from her seat at the head of the table. "Your mother-in-law's legal team was kind enough to forward us your financial records." The agent continued specifically, "The series of transfers structured to avoid reporting requirements and the direct wire to a known criminal enterprise across state lines. That makes this a federal case." "Mrs. Hayes." Tiffany looked at me. For a second, I thought she might beg. I thought she might ask for forgiveness. Instead, her face twisted into a snarl of pure hatred. "You did this," she hissed. "You old witch. You set me up." "I did not set you up, Tiffany," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "I just turned on the lights. You were the one stealing in the dark." The agent pulled her hands behind her back. The click of the handcuffs was loud and final, echoing off the expensive wood paneling. "It was not me," Tiffany screamed as they hauled her up. She started thrashing, losing all composure, the influencer mask shattering completely. "It was Marcus. He made me do it. He sold the house. It is his money. I was just doing what he told me. He is the one you want." Marcus stood there watching the woman he had worshipped, the woman he had sold his birthright for, point a finger right at his chest and try to send him to prison in her place. The betrayal hit him harder than any slap. He did not say a word. He just watched as they dragged her toward the door, her expensive heels dragging on the carpet, her screams echoing down the hallway until the elevator doors slid shut, cutting off her lies. I looked at the empty chair where she had sat. I looked at the blue folder still resting on the table. The silence returned, but this time it was not heavy. It was clean. The storm was over, leaving nothing but wreckage in its wake. The elevator doors hummed shut, taking Tiffany and her screaming lies down to the street. Marcus stood frozen in the center of the room, staring at the space where she had been. His hands were shaking violently. He looked at the screen where the photo of the yacht still glowed, mocking him. J.S. Consulting. Jason Sterling. The man she had told him not to worry about. The man she was funding with my retirement money with Marcus S. inheritance. Slowly, like a building with its foundations blown out, Marcus crumpled. Did not sit. He sank. He fell to his knees on the plush conference room carpet, his expensive suit bunching around him. He put his head in his hands and began to sob, ugly broken sounds that echoed in the large room. The arrogance was gone, the pride was gone. All that was left was a foolish boy who realized he had set fire to his own life to keep a predator warm. "Mom," he choked out, reaching for the hem of my skirt like he was 5 years old and had scraped his knee. I did not know. I swear to God, I did not know. She told me it was for us. She told me we were building an empire. I lost everything. Mom, the house, the money. She was cheating on me the whole time. I have nothing. Help me. Please help me fix this. I looked down at the top of his head. I remembered the day he was born, how I promised to protect him from everything. But I realized in that moment that protecting him now would be the worst thing I could do. He had made a man's choices. He had to accept a man's consequences. He had chosen to betray his mother for a woman who was betraying him. I stood up slowly, smoothing my skirt. I did not touch him. I did not comfort him. "Do not kneel," I said, my voice sharp and commanding, hitting him like a physical blow. "Stand up, Marcus." He looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen, shock replacing the grief. I said, "Stand up." I repeated, my voice rising. "Men in Hattie S. House do not kneel like cowards. You stood tall enough when you sold your home without asking me. You stood tall enough when you watched her slap my face and did nothing. You chose a wife, Marcus. You chose to sign that deed. Now you have to pay the price." He slowly got to his feet, unsteady and broken. He realized I wasn't going to write a check. He realized I wasn't going to make the bad men go away. This was his mess. One of the remaining agents cleared his throat. "Excuse me, Ms. May, regarding the prisoner. We need to know if you are pressing charges for the assault the local police mentioned, or if you intend to post bail for her arraignment given the family connection." I looked at the agent. I looked at Marcus, shivering in his ruin. I thought about the rain on my face, the night they locked me out. I thought about the disrespect, the lies, the theft. I thought about the way she looked at me like I was nothing. "Take her away," I said, turning my back on my son, "and make sure you write it down in the report." She slapped me. And I do not forgive violence. She can rot in that cell until the judge sees fit to move her to a prison. The trial was swift and brutal. The federal prosecutors did not care about Tiffany's Instagram followers or her tears. They cared about the wire transfers and the tax evasion. She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for wire fraud and money laundering. I was there when the judge read the verdict. She looked at me one last time, her face stripped of all its makeup and arrogance, and I saw the realization finally hit her. She wasn't the main character of this story. She was just a lesson I had to teach my son. As for Marcus, the bankruptcy court stripped him clean. The luxury cars, the designer clothes, the watches, everything was sold to pay off creditors. He came to me a week after the sentencing, standing on my porch with a duffel bag of cheap clothes, looking like a ghost of the man who had tried to evict me. He asked if he could come home. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the boy I raised buried under layers of weakness and greed. I decided to give him a chance, but not the one he expected. "You can live in the basement apartment," I told him. "It is a studio. It has a separate entrance. You will sign a lease. You will pay market rent due on the 1st of every month. If you are late, you are evicted. And you need a job." I made a call to my old friends at the hospital. I didn't get him a desk job. I didn't get him an administration role. I got him a job in environmental services. He mops the floors now. He empties the trash. He cleans the same hallways I used to walk in my heels. He is learning scrub by scrub what it actually means to work for a living. He is learning the value of the dollar he so casually threw away. I also updated my will that afternoon. The Brownstone, the investment portfolio. The legacy, it is no longer going to Marcus. It is going to the nursing scholarship fund at my church, and the remainder is going into a trust for Dante. He proved he has the character to hold the weight of my life's work. It is a quiet Sunday evening now. The storm has long passed, leaving the air crisp and clean. I am sitting on my front porch with Dante watching the sunset paint the Harlem streets in gold and violet. We are drinking tea from my good china. The neighborhood is peaceful. I look over at Dante. He is reading a law book preparing for his next exams. He looks up and smiles a genuine warm smile that reminds me that family isn't just blood. It is loyalty. "You know, Dante," I say, setting my cup down on the saucer, "money is just paper. It burns, it tears, it gets spent. You can lose a fortune in a day. But character, dignity, that is stone. You build on that, and no storm can knock you down." Marcus and Tiffany thought wealth was something you wear. They didn't understand that wealth is something you are. I lean back in my rocking chair, feeling the solid wood beneath me. And they made one fatal mistake. I add, looking out at the street I have lived on for 40 years. They forgot who I am. They looked at my gray hair and my slow walk, and they saw a victim. They didn't know they were picking a fight with a woman who lived through the civil rights era. I marched when dogs were snapping at my heels. I fought for my seat at the table when they didn't want to let a black woman in the door. I have survived worse things than a greedy daughter-in-law. Dante laughs a deep, rich sound. "I don't think they will ever make that mistake again, Aunt Hattie." I smile. "No, I don't think they will." So that is my story. I would love to hear what you think. Was I too hard on my son, forcing him to pay rent and work as a janitor? Or was this the only way to save him from himself? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine. The story of Hattie Mae serves as a powerful reminder that true power lies not in the loudness of one's voice or the brand on one's luggage, but in the quiet strength of integrity and preparation. Tiffany and Marcus made the fatal mistake of confusing their elder's silence for weakness and her kindness for foolishness. They chased the illusion of wealth-fleeting trends and social media validation while discarding the tangible legacy Hattie had built through decades of sacrifice. This narrative teaches us that generational wealth is fragile. It requires stewardship, not entitlement. Hattie's actions demonstrate that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is stop protecting their child from the consequences of their own actions. By forcing Marcus to start from the bottom, she offered him a chance at redemption that money could never buy. We learn that dignity is the ultimate currency, and those who trade family loyalty for quick cash will eventually find themselves bankrupt in the ways that matter most. Never underestimate the wisdom earned through a lifetime of survival. If you agree that Hattie made the right choice, hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message.